Good evening, everyone. We will call the Planning Commission to order, but first, if there's anyone that needs a translator, we do have someone available. Please let us know. So when you step up to the podium, they can take care of it. Thank you. Is there anyone that needs a translator?
Alguien aquí, buenas tardes, bienvenidos a todos. Hay alguien aquí que necesita un intérprete.
There is one? Okay. When it's time, we'll let you know. Okay. We're bringing the Planning Commission to order on this Tuesday, May 12th. Commissioner Ivan Garcia, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and now, Ms. Lopez, will you have the roll call?
Chair Armstrong,
Here.
Armstead,
Here.
Vice Chair Queel,
Here.
Commissioner Lopez, Commissioner Ivan Garcia,
Present.
Commissioner Flores,
Here.
Commissioner Sherrick,
Here.
Commissioner Orlando Garcia,
Here.
Commissioner Lewis is excused, and Commissioner Lopez is absent.
Okay. It is now time for public comments for items listed and not listed on the agenda. A 3-minute limitation. A 3-minute limitation shall apply to each member of the public who wishes to address the Planning Commission on any item on the agenda, excluding public hearings. There is no limit to the number of items that may be discussed within the 3-minute time limit. Okay, Ms. Lopez, can you have the administration of oath for our public speakers? Okay, is there anyone wishing to speak on a matter that is not on the agenda?
¿Alguien quiere hablar de algo que no está en la agenda?
Are you coming up to? Okay. No? Okay, I'm assuming everyone else is speaking on the agenda. Okay. The first one will be Carmen Gonzalez.
Va a ser Carmen González.
Please come up to the podium.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hola, hello, good afternoon.
Mi nombre es Macarmen González,
Marta González is my name,
organizadora con la Colectiva Popular para la Justicia Ambiental.
Organizer of the Popular here.
Mi comentario es
My
nada
comment
más que bueno que regresa para atrás. Estoy a favor de que regrese para atrás el
I'm
proyecto
in favor that the project come back
para tener más diálogo.
so we can have more dialogue.
También quería
I
preguntar,
also wanted to ask,
¿por qué no,
Why not?
o cómo fue la forma en repartir o
form?
informar a la comunidad?
how can we
Porque
inform the community and more?
algunas personas
Some
no
persons
recibieron la
Did not
notificación
receive the
o el
notification
aviso para
or
poder estar aquí.
to be here tonight.
Era todo mi comentario.
That was all my comment.
Muchas gracias y gracias por la interpretación.
Thank you so much, and thank you for my interpreter.
Thank you. The next speaker is Francis Chu.
I'm sorry, I think proponent on item number 2 on the
If the chairwoman, if the comment card has specified that they're going to speak on a specific item, then we can wait to receive their comments when we get to that item.
Clarification, is it number 2 or number 5? Number 3? Okay. All right, so we will wait. The next one, oh, yours is number 3. Okay, and the next one, Christian Flores. And yours is for item number 5 is specific, sir? So we wait until that. Do we wait or do we go ahead? Does he get
If his comment is for item 5, then we can wait till
You can
then.
wait till number 5. Okay, we'll call you back up, sir. Next are the consent calendar. The next item is a consent agenda. Consent items are routine in nature and may be enacted in one motion. All public and non-public hearings will be open at one time. Any item may be discussed separately upon request of a member of the Planning Commission or a member of the public. Does staff have any updates to the consent calendar?
Thank you, Chair. Our only item on the consent agenda this evening would be the minutes from the meeting of February 13th, 2024.
Is there anyone wishing to speak on the consent calendar? If not, I need a motion to approve the consent calendar, which is the minutes. I need a motion.
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Chair Armstead? Vice Chair Quill?
I will abstain. I was absent at that meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Ivan Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherrick?
Yes.
And Commissioner Orlando Garcia?
Yes.
Thank you. Six yes, one abstain.
Okay.
Chairwoman, 1 second. Can you clarify, was that 5 yes and 1 abstain?
Yes, 5.
Okay, thank you.
Next are the public hearing items. The Planning Commission will first hear a report from staff, and then the public hearing will be opened. The applicant will have an opportunity to speak. Next, members of the public will be allowed to speak. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak must be sworn in and fill out a request to speak form. The forms are located at the table near the door. When your name is called, come forward and speak your name into the microphone. Say and spell your name for the taped record. After all have spoken, the applicant will be allowed to respond. Public hearing will then be closed, and Planning Commission will begin deliberations and make a decision. All decisions except the general plan amendments and municipal code amendments are final actions unless an appeal is filed, and fees are paid within 15 days to the Community and Economic Development Department. If you challenge the resulting action of the Planning Commission in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised during the public hearing described in this agenda or in written correspondence delivered to the Community Development and Housing Development or before the public hearing. Okay, now we will introduce the public hearing items. Item number 2, conditional use permit 23-06. We need staff presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Item number 2 is conditional use permit 23-06. The proposed project is a restaurant with drive-through to be located on the northeast corner of West 5th Street and North G Street on a parcel comprised of approximately 0.51 acres within the Commercial General CR2 zone and the Transit District Overlay District. Here we have an aerial view of the existing site and the surrounding uses. There are some proposed future developments to Sonic here, to the Sonic that was previously approved with the expansion of the In-N-Out drive-through car wash here. Here we have additional drive-through restaurants, convenience stores that are fully developed. This aerial is a little bit outdated, so it doesn't show the current development. And this will be the final development for the 5th Street Gateway project here, and it would be a Chipotle to be proposed there at that site. Here we have our zoning map. As you can see, it is within the CR2 zone. It is within our Transit District overlay as well. And so they will be providing some additional amenities to accommodate for that. As part of the proposed project, it is consistent of a 2,325 square foot restaurant. It's going to be a drive-through lane. The drive-through lane is actually going to be a drive-up e-pickup. So your typical drive-through lane, you go in and you order there at the menu board and then you pick up your food. In this case, you'll have to pre-order your food through a app that Chipotle has. So this is something new and innovative. You pre-order it and you drive up to pick up your order. It is going to have up to 7 vehicle stacking. As part of the restaurant as well, you are able to walk in because they are going to have walk-in services where you can go in and pick up your food and also eat indoors and outdoors as well. The operations are going to be Monday through Sunday between the hours of 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. They're expecting to have approximately 20 employees, 8 employees per shift. Currently, right now, as it relates to the access, they do have right-in, right-out access only on West 5th Street and on North G Street, and that was as part of the review for traffic and access, and I will show you in the site plan as it relates to the pork chops that are going to be built to make sure that we maintain the right-in, right-out access there. They are proposing to have 6 parking stalls, 2 ADA stalls, and also provide for 2 bicycle spaces on the site for those community members that live within the area that just are able to go through and just, they don't have a vehicle, so they can ride a bike there. Here's the existing site as it exists right now at the intersection of West 5th Street and North G Street. Here, this is the site plan as right here. Let me see if I can get the pointer. There is going to be a, let me see, a pork chop right here. So the vehicles are going to drive in, pick up their food, and then they're going to be able to exit here. And there's this built-out pork chop to prevent vehicles from turning onto G. And so that way they'll only be able to go in and out. And the same thing here on G. They'll be able to go in and then out this way. And then there's going to be a pork chop here as well. So that way that will help and deter traffic from the upcoming vehicles and help alleviate some of that. Here we have the existing floor plan. This is going to be the sit-down area. So as I mentioned, people are still going to be able to come in, have a, order their food and sit down and, eat there for lunch as well. And so that's going to be a nice benefit for the area and for also the employees within the area. This is the proposed elevation for the Chipotle, a little bit more modern in terms of design and architecture. As part of the proposed landscaping, they are going to have proposed different types of variation of shrubs and trees from 24 inches, so that's going to cover the whole site area. And so it's going to be fully landscaped, so you're going to be able to see that there. And with that, our recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2024-009, finding that the project is categorically exempt pursuant to section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures, and section 15332, infill development projects of CEQA, and approving conditional use permit 23-06 based on findings of fact, and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. If you have any questions, I'm able to answer questions. I also have the applicant is here to answer any project-specific questions that you may have as well.
I have a question. When previous development was being built, I had asked the question for Public Works, you know, that I believe this is a fair share where there would need street improvements are needed, but the developer is providing fair share credits. I asked for an accounting of those fair share credits and what the impact was to the city, as the city is going to have to come up with the pay prevailing wage and come up with the funds if there's not enough in the fair share, and I haven't received that yet. Or the commission, I don't think, has received that yet.
That's something that I would need to check with our Public Works Department. I'm not sure why that hasn't been provided. It hasn't been provided to us directly. We have asked for it. So I can definitely make that request once more and try to get that information for you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Just for clarification for the public, this does not have a drive-through, it's a drive-up, just so the public understands the difference.
That is correct. This is going to be a drive-up, so it's a new way of ordering food. It's something that Chipotle, and I think other, like I did have a previous project in where it was a rallies and they were doing the e-pickup as well, where they can come in and pick up the food. This one you can order from the app, you drive up, and then you pick up the food if you don't want to get out of your car to get it. And there will have a mechanism in where if you haven't ordered your food, they're just going to be like, sorry, we can't help you. You have to order your food via the website and then, or the app, and then come back. Or they have the option of parking and then going inside.
Anyone else?
I have a question. It's probably a question for the applicant. I just want to know what's the average size of a Chipotle. This is a pretty big lot and 2,300 plus square feet. Seems like a pretty big restaurant size for a Chipotle.
Chairwoman, before the applicant begins, I'd recommend you open the public hearing now.
Okay, we are now open for public comment. And we do have a public comment on this one, the applicant.
Hi, I'm Danielle Foley, the applicant for this project. This has actually been a new standard size for their Chipotles that they're trying to implement with the drive-through, so they have the capacity to service both the drive-through orders and then the guests up front. And, you know, it might seem like a large site, but trying to get the circulation and the trash pickup, we did have a lot of challenges with it, but I think we're really happy with how it ended out.
Thank you.
I just have one more question. That you have read over the conditions of approval and you're satisfied with them? There's no concerns?
Yes, we're happy with them.
Thank you.
Through the chair, I have a question. Perhaps staff or perhaps you can help me with this. How do you identify the drive-through or drive-up so that people don't pull into the driveway and think they can order? Is there an outdoor menu sign?
No, so there's no menu sign to order at. So I actually have one of these by my house, and I did drive up, and they told me to drive around and then come back if I wanted to place the order. So there is signage at the entry for pickup, not identifying not a drive-through, but it does identify pickup, but there's no menu board, so no one can order, you just have to drive up to the window.
Okay, so the sign indicates pickup. It does not indicate drive-through?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? I do have a question. How critical is the study you're talking about for a project like this? How critical? I don't know.
Maybe staff could answer. In my opinion, I don't think it's critical to hold up the project, but it's something that I would like to know when we're approving these projects, what the impact is to general fund or restricted funds.
Can someone answer that for us?
I don't think there's anyone here
There's no
from
one here from
Public
planning.
Works.
Yeah,
From
we need
Public Works?
somebody from Public Works to be able to provide that answer. It has been brought to their attention. We can definitely, they are a busy group, so we can definitely ask them reiterate the need and the request and try to get something for the next meeting.
Didn't we request a few meetings ago to have someone from Public Works here so we can take care of any of these issues?
We have,
Not coming?
yes, the commission has requested that, and we have brought that up. I do believe they have a new director, so we can definitely reiterate that information to the new director. So that way they're aware if we can have somebody from Public Works staff be present at the meetings, then we can have them at the meetings.
That would help us quite a bit
Okay.
because you can't answer these questions. It's not on you. Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I got a comment. I'm looking at your signage plan, and there is a paint sign on the, it'll be facing westbound right in on the entrance. It does say drive-through. I think the concern is, because I think Chipotle is very, very popular. I wouldn't say it's as popular as In-N-Out, but I know it's gonna be a popular site. The concern is that the cars end up backing up, on facing westbound on Fifth Street. If you look on, I don't know what, it's page 45 of our packet. You can see the vehicles kind of piling up there showing. The concern is that they end up on Fifth Street, kind of like it looks right now at In-N-Out. I'm not sure that we're fully prepared because I'd probably do the same thing, just drive in assuming I can order. I'm not sure if there's an answer for that.
Yeah, so the intent of the pickup is to have the customers at the window for less than 2 minutes. So, In-N-Out obviously takes a little bit longer. You place your order, then you pay, and then you get your food. Here, the whole intention is to be under 2 minutes, pick up the order, and then go.
Assuming the individual in the vehicle has an order ready to go and there's not 4 or 5 people in line trying to place an order. I guess my question is, there's a signage map. You have stop signs, you have paint signs that identifies all that. Is there something actually identifying, like I believe Commissioner Quill asked?
So that is something that will be reviewed separately as part of the, signage isn't reviewed as part of the the entitlement, CUP, that's reviewed separately. So that is something that I can definitely make a notation when the project comes in, that we make sure that we confirm all signage and identify all signage properly for the site. So we can definitely clarify that condition further as it relates to signage being reviewed separately, and then just indicate that as part of the review for the signage, we make sure that we have clear signage identifying that this is a drive-up, a pickup, not a drive-through. So we can definitely make that additional stipulation within that condition, if that would be good with the commission.
Yeah, I think so, and it's not a me thing. I mean, I think just generally speaking, I'd probably be one not knowing, especially having the new e-pickup, that we'd be piling in there, and then that rush hour around there, if you drive that often, it gets backed up already, so we're gonna back up the traffic towards the freeway, especially at that hour going that direction. But just something to definitely consider. Thank you so much.
We can definitely format that condition. Let me quickly pull that condition. We do have a condition of signage is reviewed separately, and we can further modify that and just clearly stipulate to clarify in review of the signage that they identify this is a pickup area, not a drive-through area, and that's posted.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments? We will now hold a motion. I need a motion.
Chairwoman, have you asked for other public comment on this?
Oh, no. Are there any other comments on item number 2? None?
You
Okay.
could close the public hearing now if you like.
Oh, okay, so now we will close the public comment on this item, and we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve conditional use permit 23-06.
I'll second.
Okay. We now take a vote.
Chair Armstead? Vice Chair Coyle?
Yes.
Commissioner Ivan Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherrick?
Yes.
And Commissioner Orlando Garcia?
Yes.
The vote is unanimous. It passes.
We will now discuss public hearing item number 4, conditional use permit 23-17. I'm sorry, item 3, I'm sorry. We're now have public comment on conditional use permit 23-10. I'm sorry. Okay.
If I may, before we hand off this item to Elizabeth, for conditional use permit 2310, it was noticed after the packet was distributed, there was a specific exhibit for the item. This was the exhibit justifying the categorical exemption for the project. Was included in the packet, but there was an error in compiling the complete agenda where the exhibit was split, and there were some other pages that were inserted in the middle of that. We understand that could have been a little bit confusing. We did want to make sure that everybody had that full information, so we did print that up separately. I believe that's been provided to all of the commissioners. This would be the environmental determination categorical exemption for the Starbucks drive-through. And thank you. And there are also copies that have been provided for members of the public, should they have interest. That's it, yes.
Okay, and with that, item number 3 is conditional use permit 23-10. The proposed project is a restaurant with drive-through. This will be for a new Starbucks to be located on the southwest corner of West Kendall Drive and Shandon Hill Circle. This will be located within an existing commercial shopping center that has multiple tenants. The parcel in itself is a single parcel that is part of this shopping center. I'm not sure if the commissioners are aware, this is where the Stater Brothers is located at. The project site is approximately 0.43 acres within the commercial general CG1 zone and the transit district overlay. Here we have an existing aerial of the existing site. This is one of 2 remnant pads within the shopping center. So they are going to be located here. So they are going to encompass this area as part of they're not going to be required to do any additional offsite improvements because that whole area has already been fully improved and they have existing landscaping. So they're just going to embed into that existing landscaping as well. Here we have the existing project zoning area. As you can see, it is within the commercial CG1 surrounding area, and it has existing a residential neighborhood that surrounds the whole site. For the project is approximately 1,990 square feet. This is going to be your standard drive-through lane. So you are going to be able to order on site and then be able to go off-site. It does allow for a total of 7 vehicles stacking with 7 behind the menu board. As part of the review for the traffic, in case that there was any stacking of vehicles beyond the drive-through lane, they did prepare a contingency plan as part of the review for the traffic analyses, and that will be maintained within not only the Starbucks owner and operator, but also with the city to make sure that it is implemented as part of that. So essentially, if they go behind the menu board, they will have an employee out there guiding traffic and taking orders to make sure that they don't block any driveways or access to the site. It will operate Monday through Sunday. There will be approximately 40 employees, 8 to 9 per shift. As I mentioned, there is 2 driveways on the existing site, one West Kendall Drive, one through Shandon Hills Circle, one through Shandon Hills Drive. There are currently CC&Rs in place that allow for vehicular access and parking. However, within their existing site, they will provide 13 parking spaces and then 1 for ADA accessibility. Here is the existing site as you're facing on West Kendall Drive. Here we have the existing drive-through. There is going to be existing landscaping, fully grown trees, and they're going to add additional landscaping between the areas here, additional landscaping here, and then along the actual drive-through lane, there will be some additional landscaping and buffering that will be created. Oh, I don't know what happened. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Here's the existing proposed elevation. It's a little bit more modern in terms of the Starbucks design. They are creating a lot more modern design in terms of the architecture. And as part of the drive-through lane, so this is going to be the drive-through lane here. They are going to provide some growing vines and flowering plants here just to kind of break that facade area. Here's the existing landscaping. As mentioned, there are fully grown trees already completely developed there and grassed areas. They're not going to interrupt that. That's still going to be kept. They're just going to be end up adding additional landscaping and buffering around the drive-through. And then they're going to be having additional landscaping in the areas that they're going to connect to. And with that, staff's recommendation at this point is for the Planning Commission to adopt resolution number 2024-010, finding the project categorically exempt pursuant to section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures in accordance to CEQA, and approving conditional use permit 23-10 based on findings of fact and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. I do have the applicant here if you have any additional questions that are project specific.
Okay, we will now open up for public hearing. And I do have one person for public comment right now, Francis Chu.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Francis Chu. I'm with Fountainhead Development at 1401 Quail Street in Newport Beach. I just want to say it took us a little more than 4 years to finally be able to bring Starbucks on this sort of underused vacant property, and we hope that this would be an impetus to maintain and entice additional tenants to complete the entire development. I also want to say thank you to Elizabeth. We made the application kind of in the summer of last year, and the project was kind of linger a little bit until Elizabeth was assigned the project, and she was like kind of late. But once she's on board, she was able to push us along to tonight. So I want to thank her and appreciate the fact that she's kind of pushing her way in to get this done. I'm also here for any questions, if you have any.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chu. I just have a general question in regards to the exhibits and the architecture. Is there a reason why Starbucks ain't identified on the drawings? It just says coffee or something generic?
Typically, on our applications, some of the tenants do not want to identify themselves, just for the fact that they're still negotiating the projects, and also because of competitive tenants. So that's typically how we approach it.
Okay, so we're clear that
It is a Starbucks.
it's going to be a Starbucks.
We executed the contract, so
Okay.
we're good now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to confirm that you approve with the conditions of approval. There's no concerns.
We have no concern.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Through the chair, I have a question, perhaps to staff. When you mentioned that the building architecture conforms to what the center has existing, how do you evaluate that, and do you have pictures of the existing center? I believe the existing center has mission tile roof. I could be wrong.
Yeah. The shopping center does have mission tile roof on certain structures, but some of the structure in the front along the Candle Street have a variations of our architecture. With that consideration, what we are proposing is we will maintain the same architectural scheme in terms of the color. So we're using some of the stucco finishes and the same color scheme to match the existing shopping center.
There's a Chase Bank up there also?
Yeah,
right?
there's a Chase Bank to the west of our project, and there's I think it's an auto dealership to the east.
Yeah. Does the Chase Bank doesn't have
No,
Spanish tile?
Yeah, there's some of a flat roof
Yeah.
look to it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Do we have any other public comments on this item? No? Okay, we will now close the public hearing on this item and call for a motion.
I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2024-010, approving conditional use permit 2310, based on the findings and facts and subject to recommended conditions of approval. Thank you so much.
I'll second.
Okay. We will now proceed with the vote.
Chair Armstead? Vice Chair Quill?
Aye.
Commissioner Ivan Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherrick?
Yes.
And Commissioner Orlando Garcia?
Yes.
The vote is unanimous. It passes.
Okay, now we will proceed to item number 4, conditional use permit 23-17 for the operation of a drive-through car wash. Go ahead.
If I may, as well, before we get to the presentation, similar to the last item, there was one error in the compilation of the packet that we also identified. Following the categorical exemption exhibit that was included for the car wash item, 2317, there should have been a page that provided a link to where the technical studies for that exemption, in this case, the traffic memorandum and the noise impact analysis, were available. Those were on our city's website. They had been made available as of the posting of the packet last Friday, but that one sheet that provided the link for them was omitted, just in error. So for this evening, both for the commissioners and the members of the public, we did provide the copies of those exhibits or of those technical reports for your consideration.
Okay, and with that, Commissioners, I bring to you item number 4. Item number 4 is conditional use permit 23-17. The proposed project is to develop an express drive-through car wash containing approximately 3,596 square feet on a project site located at 886 East Hospitality Lane, on a project parcel that comprises approximately 1.44 acres within the Commercial Regional CR3 zone and Transit District overlay. Here we have it, the existing site as proposed. The existing site is an existing vacant property that is part of this existing the North Point shopping center, so it encompasses that area, and it is surrounded predominantly of commercial office and commercial retail uses, as well as hotels and motels. Here we have the existing project site. As you can see, it is located within the Commercial Regional CR3 zone. The proposed project will have approximately 3,596 square feet. It will have 3 lanes for queuing that I will show you within the next site, the site plan. It will operate Monday through Sunday between the hours of 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. It will have approximately 2 to 4 employees per shift, 2 shifts per day. As part of the improvement for the site, it will go into a new signalized intersection on East Hospitality Lane, and I will provide further details about that. The project site will have 19 parking stalls. We would have 14 vacuum stalls, 2 ADA vacuum stalls, 2 employee stalls, and 1 ADA stall. There are existing CC&Rs in place at the site for existing access and reciprocal access, as well as parking for the existing site. As part of this project, they do have to provide a they have to provide in accordance with section 19.19A.060 that subject to a CUP, the project has to provide an economic stimulus development activity as required for the processing of the conditional use permit. Therefore, the applicant did provide a justification letter identifying the additional economic development activity that it will generate as part of it coming into this site. One of the main things is for the on-site and building construction. As part of the construction for this development, at full construction, it would have implemented approximately $3.5 to $4 million, and in that process, employ approximately 50 skilled laborers, ranging in different kinds of trades, from masons, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, and concrete and similar trade permits. Additionally, as part of the off-site improvements, they will pay into the new signalized intersection. And I'm going to take you back a little bit to the aerial view. So currently right now we have existing project development for a Dutch Bros across the street, and then we have an open pad. As part of the previously approved Dutch Bros, they were conditioned to have a signalized intersection. The amount for that new signalized intersection was too much for them. So then this developer, when they came in, they're gonna pay into that new signalized intersection, and it's gonna have full improvements. So they've already have currently under review within the Public Works Department reviewing the construction drawings for that new signalized intersection. So that's how they're going to provide that additional economic stimulus, because now with this new new signalized intersection, the Dutch Bros will be providing new employment, new accessibility, new benefits, and then with the future pad, it's going to incentivize somebody else being able to come in quickly and take over the pad, because they're going to have now a new signalized intersection at that area. Additionally, currently the property as assessed, if I may, really quick. So currently the property value as assessed for the taxation is $9,601 at a value of $731,000 approximately. The tax rate is 1.2%. With a new development there, that taxation will increase. So then, everything will get taxed higher. So then they will be able to pay more into taxation, which is a benefit for the surrounding, local agencies on that aspect. Additionally, as part of the additional community benefits, the business operator, Quick Quack, as the developer, they will pay additional development impact fees associated with all the improvements, pay any additional fees associated with pulling permits, application fees, and they also do fundraising events. As of 2023, the average contribution per location for a Quick Quack is approximately $5,500. And they're also here, so that if you have additional questions regarding that, they can definitely answer that information. So that's how we were able to provide the justification for the support of the conditional use permit as it relates to providing that additional economic development activity and stimulate that area. Here you have the existing site facing north on East Hospitality Lane. As it is right now, as you can see, there is the existing SBX line that will get altered with the new signalized area. The Dutch Bros has been diligently working with Public Works, and they do currently have construction drawings in place and under review for that whole improvement of that intersection. Here is just kind of a boiler template in terms of how that intersection looks conceptually, as it's not fully developed because that's currently being reviewed, but conceptually the signalized areas would be here, so then vehicles would be able to go into the site, circulate around the site, so that way they don't block driveways or drive aisles, circulate through the area and then out. And so that kind of will alleviate any backup in this area. So that's one of the important features that they've provided. And then they'll be able to go in and out of the site, as well accommodating for the SBX site. So it's fully improved, and the Dutch Bros has been working in conjunction with this development and with Public Works to make sure that we have a satisfactory intersection that matches and is with the similar design as the rest of that whole intersection, because as you can see, hospitality has a uniqueness to it. So this intersection will match that. As a part of the proposed elevation, one of the requirements we did ask for is for them to have a similar match as it relates to the design. So they did tone down the colors a little bit more, so it's not that bright yellow colors. It's a little bit more of the warm toned, more stone veneer colors. So that way, although, because that whole center has different types of architectural elements across the board, so this was kind of the happy medium that alleviated not only keeping their branding, but also matching the center that we have out there at the site location. As part of that, there is also existing landscaping and improvements. So they are going to improve this whole intersection, but they are going to be able to maintain some of the existing landscaping and fully grown landscaping of the site, plus add additional landscaping and buffering that will protect the site And so it's going to be a fully landscaped area, and the other pads as well will be fully landscaped as well. With that, at this time, the staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2024-011, finding the project categorically exempt pursuant to section 15332, infill development projects in accordance to CEQA, and approving conditional use permit 23-17 based on findings of fact and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. The applicant is here to answer any kind of project-specific questions that you may ask, and then I'm also here to answer as much questions as possible as well.
We will now open up the public hearing on this item. Do we have any public comments on this item? Item number 4.
Thank you, Chair. I just have 2 questions. Elizabeth, when you say pay into for the signal, does that mean like both developers are paying for the signal, or is there a city portion?
So both developers are paying into the signal, correct?
Thanks.
So yeah, the Dutch Bro, Quick Quack will pay the Dutch Bros to be able to get this signalized improved, correct? The city is not paying for this.
Thank you. And just one other question, the developer has no concerns with the conditions?
We're fully accepting all the conditions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question / observation. For staff, I was wondering what was, I guess, the justification for providing so much economic analyses for this item compared to the last 2 items we received, who are also conditional use permits.
So, and this one specifically, they, according to section 19.1906, within this specific transit district overlay, it requires for the project to provide an additional economic stimulus development activity, since these types of uses are restricted. So there is a restriction in having the number of car washes within the area. They have a prohibition. So as part of that, subject to a conditional use permit, they have to provide this additional analysis showcasing that they are able to provide this type of incentive for the area. And that is why we ask for this additional data, to be able to properly justify that request and be able to justify the support for the conditional use permit.
Wasn't the Chipotle also on a transit overlay?
That one is within the transit district overlay. That one, it is within a CG1, which is a commercial general zone designation that allows for restaurants with drive-through. This specifically one has a restriction as it relates to the car washes. So for that reason, we ask for this additional information to be able to justify the support for the conditional use permit.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question of staff, and I'm putting my Chamber of Commerce hat on. Let's take another look at that elevation. You had made a comment that the planners toned down the color or the elevation instead of using perhaps the proposed yellow.
Yeah, they do brighter yellow colors, green colors. Can you chime in a little bit more in terms of the color tone? So yeah, they use a little bit more of the brighter yellows, colors, brighter green colors. So they're not using those color tones. They're using more of a matted, well, I wouldn't say matted, but like beige colors, warm colors that are more compatible with that center.
Well, let me ask you,
Yeah. Yes.
who is it that makes those decisions on changing those colors? Again, my Chamber of Commerce hat tells me if this guy's going to invest all this money to have a business, he would like to have something that looks like a car wash. And have not only that, but a large sign that goes along with it. And I know that there's limitations to the amount of signage they can have. I'd drive right by that and not know it's a car wash.
So we are going to be reviewing, they are going to have additional signage. That is something that will be reviewed separately. It's not reviewed as part of the entitlement. So they are proposing some signage and some monument signage that will identify the business operation. And as it relates to the color designation, that was something that was reviewed with the previous director. And in the discussion with that previous director, in review and evaluation at it being part of the shopping center, then it was a suggestion and a determination that they match those colors.
Okay. Well, I'm just expressing my unfairness because there is a car wash over there on Tippecanoe that's bright red and white in color and black, relatively new car wash. And this doesn't look like what I've normally seen of the car washes. And I think that these people do a pretty good quality job on their decoration. So I hate to see it going that way personally.
Okay.
I like to see something alive.
If that is something that the commission is open and able and allowed to, we as staff, we can definitely revisit that with the applicant and be able to modify the color scheme to their traditional scheme.
Well, I just think some consideration needs to be given before we start putting all these restrictions and changing these opportunities for these business people to develop their projects and advertise their projects properly. I'd sure hate to see them go through all this and find out we failed, so.
Thank you for the feedback. I definitely don't disagree with the statement. That is something that we can, as staff, are able to review the color schemes. And if it's something that the commission, would want them to continue and maintain their branding, because obviously it is, as you mentioned, a disadvantage that they can face, we can definitely have them go back to their original design. I don't think and staff is here to object to a new business operating here with their branding design.
Yeah, I think there's some constitutional items there. Being in the sign business, I recall times when the cities wanted to restrict colors on signs, and the cities were unable to do that. So I think the restrictions on these colors, for me, they don't work, and I think for business people, they don't work. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for the input, and we can definitely work with the developer on making, allowing them to continue to move forward with what the original designs are for the Quick Quack branding.
If I may add, one thing, just looking at the elevations today, as you mentioned, obviously they would have the sign on the building as well. That's not considered as part of the permit today, but that would certainly be allowed, as Elizabeth had noted on the previous item. There's also the considerations for the signage along the street fronting their property. It's in the multi-tenant center, so there are other combined signage opportunities where they may be able to place a panel. And with the layout of the site, the building being set back already a little bit and having all of the canopies, there's going to be the traditional equipment that you see. I believe it's usually the big orange, kind of the spheres that you have, all of the vacuum stations, the things that we typically do identify as part of the car wash. So there will be other hallmarks aside from just the building color that will kind of lend to the attention getting, if you will.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just wanted to make it a point that sometimes we get too restrictive on people's logos and their colors and so on. So that's my input.
No, and we appreciate that and understand. Thank you.
I have a couple of comments. First, where's the next closest car wash to this one? You had mentioned there's one down the street.
There,
So how close is the next one?
let me see if I can grab a. So there is one on the, and I'm cutting the intersection because I wanted to make sure I stayed within the vicinity, but there is one on the corner of Hospitality and Tippecanoe.
Correct.
And there is one that's going to be a Quick Quack car wash as well as a Starbucks restaurant with drive-through. And then there is a Fast Five Express Car Wash on Hospitality and Waterman.
Okay, well, my other comment is we've already got more than 30 car washes in this city. And there's several that are right next to each other. So it's a comment, it should be an observation, especially to the public. Do we need another car wash close to another one? That's a question, that's a comment. But we need to be aware how many car washes we have in the city. We already have more than 30, and several of them are right beside each other.
That's definitely something that staff is considering, and something that we will continue to bring up with the new director that comes on board, and making them aware of the concerns, because we are aware of those concerns. When, projects get brought to us, we just process them based on our code, and there are no restrictions related to limiting the car washes and where the locations and placements that they go. But that is something that we are aware of, and that's something that we will definitely continue to bring up with the new director and make them aware of those concerns that the commission brings forward.
Any other comments?
I have a couple of questions. First question is, or comment is, I'm in favor of the project. Just wanted to know, when are we gonna start breaking ground on the other Quick Quack car washes? I know we have one over on Kendall, and then we have the one on 5th Street near In-N-Out. I was just curious to know when those were gonna break ground.
So the one for Kendall, that one is going to be breaking ground. Their goal is to try to obtain, and I know this because they asked this question this week, they will be obtaining the construction drawings probably within the next week or so. So they should start commencing construction before the end of the month. The one that's Shandon and Kendall. And then you had the one for 5th and
5th and G, I believe it is.
that one is currently under construction. I have the planner here. So that one did go through plan check. It was currently approved just recently. So they should be starting.
All right, my next question was, the landscape that we have as part of the landscaping plans, I was just curious to know what type of trees were specified, just so we're protecting some of, neighbors, or just the site, to consider basically the growth of those trees to protect any nearby buildings or underground utilities.
Yeah, so they are going to be preserving some of the landscaping that's out there that won't be interfering with the new signalized intersection. But as part of the trees, they will have 15-gallon to 24-inch box trees throughout the whole site, and also fronting the site. That will include Marina strawberry, crepe myrtle, and coast live oak, and for a total of 14 trees. So they're going to be able to stay within the size limitations of those types of trees.
And then my last question is, on Google Maps, I noticed there's like some electrical and telecom vaults where I believe is the landscape planning area. I was just curious to know if we've assessed the existing conditions.
Yes, we have. I think most of the structures you're looking at are at the southwest corner, and they're actually tied into stormwater. And so the plan is taken into consideration leaving and using those. So we've spent a good amount of time looking at the structures that are there, and also tying in with the Dutch Brothers development and the orientation to make sure that all those items will work.
And then just the last question, just to kind of jump back on to Larry Quayle's question related to the colors. I was just curious to know, what is the color difference between this car wash and the other 2 car washes that we recently approved last year?
So this is a very unique project for the community, and I will tell you that part of it's also because of the CCNRs that are in place in the shopping center, and the developer who developed the balance of the project, who I'm working with as part of this project. So we came to the city in fourth quarter of 2022 with the proposed project. And part of that included a preliminary site plan and the elevations. And the elevations, it's a pretty much like your comment on the Fast Five, pretty white building with a lot of very bright yellows and very bright greens. And it's either completely stucco or CMU. The building that you have is significantly enhanced to match both the DaVita dialysis that's next door in the Panera, which includes both the texture and the feel, and then also has more of what I would consider a desert tone, which is a little more unique in these areas, as opposed to something that you might find that's a CMU block building in the Pacific Northwest or East Coast areas. So, and it also includes, spandrel glazing and window areas to break up the elevations. And that was based on not just the city's request, but also what the shopping center developer wanted to incorporate with the other items that are there. So it's a few things. So it's every aspect of it, including the materials that are on it.
Thank you. That's all that I have.
Any other public comments?
I have a comment. Looking in Google Maps, I think the color scheme blends right in with the surrounding businesses. I do respect the branding portion, as my fellow commissioner mentioned, but I could also understand that all this thought was put into place, thinking about the local community and the businesses. I would have to guess that the audience we're trying to attract there is the local businesses. There is some residential off, east of Tippecanoe. But if I'm guessing, a lot of the business is going to come from lunchtime washes, before and after washes. That's what I personally would see there in that. So I can appreciate the softer tones, the not so bright colors, which you'll, in my opinion, you'll get out of the signage. I don't think there'll be a lack of signage there, but yeah, and, the other issue with the amount of car washes, I did see the Fast Five. I personally don't see an immediate concern yet, but it's getting close to where we're maxing out, in my opinion, on washes. But I do see a need in that general area. That's all on that. And then secondly, the skilled labor. Where are we sourcing this labor from? Is it, are we considering local hire? Are we looking at our local areas? Are we gonna,
Yeah, so so just to back up a little bit on the financial question that was there. So a good portion of my business has been working with communities and cities as they're developing. When redevelopment agencies were removed and the properties went into surplus property on EOPS and ROPS, and then I worked with a lot of cities on developing those. So the summary that Elizabeth had was probably overkill, because I used a lot of the templates that have been developed for those other projects to show what's happening there. As far as the contractors, there'll most likely be two contractors that'll be involved in the project. One will handle most of the site work and the grading and utilities, and another will handle the vertical improvements. To date, we've used a local engineering firm, civil. We've used a survey crew that's out of the Banning area. We have a geotech that's up in this general geographic area. So they're not necessarily directly in San Bernardino, but so far the professionals that have been associated with the project have come geographically from this area. When the contractors are hired, I can tell you that we'll go out to a bid process, and it'll go to mostly Southern California contractors. Most of them are located in this area. And most of the skilled laborers are going to come probably within 50 miles. I mean, I can almost tell you who's going to do the electrical work, the stucco work, and those items. They're going to keep them busy with the projects that are coming here, and obviously with the Chipotle and Starbucks that were here. And I would guess it's going to be some of those same contractors, because they build the same projects. I did a development south of here and went through there, and there's a Chipotle, and Starbucks was actually touring the site today, and Car Wash was doing their survey work. And I think the same contractor is probably going to build all three of those, and they would have a chance doing the same thing here.
okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Public comment? Okay, we will now close the public hearing. And I need a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 2024-011 and approve conditional use permit 23-17.
I'll second that.
Chair Armstead? Vice Chair Quill?
Yes.
Commissioner Evan Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores?
No.
Commissioner Sherrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Orlando Garcia?
Yes.
We have 3 yeses and 2 nos. 4. The vote passes.
We will now discuss item number 5, Development Permit Type P, 22-05. Go ahead, staff.
All right, thank you, Chair. Item number 5 this evening, Development Permit Type P 22-05. This is a request to allow the development and establishment of a truck and trailer parking facility on a parcel containing approximately 2.9 acres southeast, of West Rialto Avenue and South Rancho Avenue. This evening, staff does not have a presentation to make. Our recommendation this evening, by request directly of the project applicant, is to continue this item to the next meeting of April 9th.
We will now open it up for public hearing, and I do have one speaker. Ms. Gonzalez? No, I'm sorry. Christian Flores. I'm sorry, I had the wrong one. Christian Flores.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much. My name is Christian Flores. I'm a community organizer with Inland Congregations United for Change. However, for the first part of the public comment, I was requested to be here on behalf of Manuel Uribe, who's one of the residents at Santiago Mobile Home Park, who had received prior notices for other stages of this particular item. But for this particular meeting, he hadn't received one, but somebody else that had received one left it on the floor by the mailboxes, so that's how he found out about it. And so he contacted me saying he probably wouldn't be able to make it here because he'd be working late. But him, as well as me, myself, being in favor of being able to continue that item at the next month's meeting. I know in coalition with other community organizations and a lot of mobile home residents from 3 of the different mobile homes around that neighborhood came together, and it was the first item at Planning Commission for the city to ever be appealed by community members and organizations together, to really just, I guess, bring a lot of attention and focus to the issue with regards to how development is done in the city, the importance of being able to reclarify or rezone many areas that have historically faced housing and racial segregation in terms of the way that impoverished communities have purposely been placed in affordable housing that's purposely developed within industrial zones as opposed to being part of residential zones. And as such, they have suffered from a lot of side effects of being close to the industrial areas in terms of the environment, in terms of health issues, sound issues, and now infrastructure issues because they're mobile homes who don't have fixed foundations next to many trucks that are going through, creating a lot of tremors. That being said, unfortunately, a lot of the community members that have been here at prior meetings to push for this issue aren't here. I think there's at least 4 people here today. 5, maybe 6? Okay. So some new faces, also speaking to the inconsistency in terms of the notification process, but also just happy to see more people coming out and getting involved in the process. Yeah, so thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we'll see you next month.
Any other public speakers on this item? Okay, then I need a motion.
I have a question to staff on this project. We have seen this before. Isn't this a project that was looked at before or presented before? This is the old Elliott Block area?
No, it is very close to that. It's the same intersection.
Oh.
This property specifically is the southeast corner.
Oh,
The
okay.
the property that you're referencing was located just above the northeast corner, so immediately north of this site.
Okay, thank you.
Question or, well, comment. I am concerned hearing about the inconsistency about the public notification issues. Should this continue to the next meeting, will this be reissued for public notification?
So I would clarify on that. The only other public meeting that this item has gone through, as all items that come to the Planning Commission do, would be through the Development and Environmental Review Committee. At that meeting, because there's no formal action taken on the item, it was simply moved forward to the Planning Commission for consideration. There was not noticing done. That is a standard practice, as you know, as outlined in our code. We notify for hearings Planning Commission, DRC, or City Council when we are looking for a formal recommendation, either of approval or, should it be going to council, a recommendation for their approval or consideration. The DRC was simply a review hearing to consider draft conditions and, you know, be moved forward to the Planning Commission. So there wasn't noticing done. I'm not sure exactly what notices were referred to. For this meeting, I can say we did notice properly, as is required, 1,000 feet to both owners and occupants. Should this item be continued as recommended to the April meeting, being that it's continued to a date specific, we would not be required to renotice.
Chairwoman? Yes, if you could come to the podium. Thank you.
No, thank you for clarifying that, because it is a separate corner, or like a different corner, like since it's on the upside of the street, that would mean that the notification radius would have changed. So not the same people within the same mobile home parks or on the same ends of the mobile home park would necessarily be notified, that being the case.
That's correct. The radius itself would have stayed the same. It is still 1,000 feet, but because the project site shifted roughly from here down to here, it would have now encompassed new properties that may have not been noticed for the other item. Likewise, it would have excluded properties that may have been noticed for the other, just depending on where that boundary is now redrawn.
So it's a very similar project, but a separate one. Yes.
That is correct.
Any other public comments? Go ahead. Other public comments? Close the public hearing on this
Chairwoman, we keep the public hearing open.
We are?
Yes, you keep it open, and if you want to continue, someone makes a motion to continue, a second and a vote, but you keep the public hearing open.
Okay.
I'll motion to continue the project to the April
That
9th.
would be April 9th.
April 9th.
Yes, thank you.
Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, we'll now take a vote.
Chair Armstead?
Yes, this is to continue.
To
Correct,
continue.
yes.
Vice Chair Creel? Commissioner Ivan Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Orlando Garcia.
Yes.
The vote passes to continue.
Okay, we'll now go to item number 6, Development Code Amendment 24-02, Emergency Shelter Overlay.
All right, thank you, Chair. Our final item this evening, item number 6, Development Code Amendment 24-02. This is a city-initiated request to amend specific sections of the Development Code to update our emergency shelter overlay. This would be for compliance with recent state legislation. A little bit of background on this project, and bear with me, we'll try not to make this more technical than is needed. So in 2010, the city adopted the emergency shelter overlay as it exists in our code currently. That section of the code establishes areas where emergency shelters can be developed, specifically as a by right action, which means they would not require any kind of discretionary review, as you know, with the other items we've had in front of us this evening. And it identified specific properties in the city. At the time, in 2010, the properties that were identified and that remain in our overlay today were primarily industrial sites. It was some of our heavy commercial, some of our industrial light, and some of our office industrial park. Not all parcels within those zones, but specific sites that were called out throughout the city. At the time, that was compliant with state law and how we could define certain areas for this type of use. Recently, this was about 2 years ago, there was legislation that passed that requires a little bit of a rethinking of how we identify sites. Specifically, we now have to allow them in at least one zone within the city. So it's not to say we can't still include those other industrial areas, but we now have to identify a zone within the city that will allow sufficient acreage based off a capacity that I'll explain how we determine in just one moment. And that zone has to allow residential use. So the properties that we currently have in the overlay, the heavy commercial and the 2 industrial zones, they don't allow any type of other residential development. Nothing new, no multifamily or mixed use or single family, anything of that sort. So those no longer qualify to meet the threshold established by this new legislation. So coming up to recently, as we know, through the adoption of the housing element and the project that we've been working on for the last year, we have been under a stipulated judgment because of our delinquency in adoption. As part of that, there were several things that we had to complete. One was the adoption of the housing element, which I'm happy to say we did. Went through its second reading for zone changes, everything complete at the meeting last week. So it was a big occasion for us. There was also an update to the density bonus ordinance. You all may recall came through the Planning Commission back in December. That was one other item that had been identified in that judgment that we had to update. That also just got completed at the March 6th meeting. And this is now the final item, the final cleanup item that we're required to do. And this is specifically to get it in compliance with specific government code section and the legislation applicable to emergency shelters. So where we're at this evening, and with the resolution that's been put in front of you and the staff report, we took a look at properties where we allow, where we do allow them, where we could allow them, having to identify now a zoning district that allows for residential use. Understanding that the industrial zones are now off the table, which I do want to clarify, those are being left in the overlay for the time being. We're simply choosing not to add to or subtract from those. We're just looking to provide these additional properties. We did identify that in our code, and this goes back to the adoption of the overlay, the CR2 zoning district, which is primarily our downtown zoning district, does also permit shelters. So they've already been considered in that zone. They've already been analyzed, from an environmental standpoint. The only issue with the current setup of our code is that they are subject to a conditional use permit. So zoning is fine. We did analyze the properties. Sorry, let me step back because I'm tripping on myself. To identify how much property we did need, we had to look at our most recent point in time count. This is where we got and look at our housed and unhoused in the community. The 2023 point in time count that we based all of this off of identified a total of 1,017 unsheltered or unhoused within the city. And this is all called out in the analysis in the staff report as well. As part of the state legislation, we have to identify area that provides a minimum of 200 square feet per unhoused person in the community. I won't do the fine point math for everyone, but if we do 200 square feet by 1,017, divide it by an acre, it comes to 4.69 or 4.67, I believe it is, acres that we have to provide in the city in that appropriate zoning district. Looking at the CR2 zone, we did identify a number of parcels, and that's been provided on kind of a supplemental exhibit to you this evening, along with a map of where those parcels are in the CR2 that total just under 9 acres. It's approximately 8.9 acres of vacant land. So that land we have identified would satisfy both the area. It's almost double what we're required to account for. It is vacant. It is zoned appropriately, meeting the residential, allowing other residential uses, in this case, multifamily and mixed use. It's simply that we currently allow it under a conditional use permit. So the heart of what we're proposing this evening is to retain that zone. Now we are going to limit it just to those specific parcels because they are all we need to satisfy the legislation. And we would change the permitting requirement from a conditional use permit to make it a by right use, which would simply be, a staff level development permit done only for the purposes of, site plan and conformance review. With that, we do have the kind of other associated amendments in the code. That would be updating the definition, to comply with how it is written now in state law, updating the appropriate commercial and industrial tables just to kind of record what we've discussed here, and then updating the shelter overlay chapter itself just to include the incorporation of those CR2 parcels, and likewise there is an update to the specific development standards. Those now have to be 100% objective standards. This is no longer discretionary action. It's kind of the same mindset that we've had to take, with ADUs and, some of those similar projects where it's you comply with these standards, it's no question, you move forward. Yes, I apologize. Those are also included in there, and those have been drafted pretty much coming specifically from the language within the legislation. So with that, I'll say happy to answer any questions on that. I know that was a lot to take in, and thank you for bearing with me. Thank you.
We will now open up for public hearing. Any comments?
So this information that you're providing us, this will be provided to the state? Or where does this information go from here?
So this will, the exhibit there specifically, that was some additional information we wanted to give. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get that exhibit together that plotted where they all are in time for the distribution last week. The resolution, what would ultimately be an ordinance, should this proceed through council, that will then be the exhibits from that, both the updates to the definitions, the land use tables, and the shelter overlay chapter itself would be incorporated as part of our development code. As a follow-up item, and as we've done now with our housing element and are currently working on with our density bonus update, we would then provide those to the state that we've been working with, simply to kind of close the book on compliance with the stipulated judgment. But there's no further review required from them.
Okay, another question. Are these identified properties are all private properties? These aren't owned by the city, correct?
Some are owned by the city, some are owned by private. I apologize, we weren't able to put the information parcel by parcel as far as the ownership.
Okay. So this would require a rezoning for some of these privately owned properties that could put some restrictions on them for developing those properties?
No, so we're not actually rezoning anything. They are currently zoned Commercial Regional 2, which is our downtown zoning district. They would remain so, and even today, absent this update in front of you, the shelters are already a use that is allowed there. The simple thing, or the key thing with this, is that they are allowed subject to a conditional use permit. And now, to comply with state law, we're requesting to change it so that they are permitted by right, absent the land use permit. But as far as what's allowed, where it's allowed, nothing is proposed to be changed as part of this update.
Okay, thank you.
Just have a question. I didn't see it. I might have missed it. How many beds would this provide?
As I said, I don't have, I didn't do the numbers backwards, forgive me. What we did, and I may have said it very quickly, the 1,017 that we identified as unhoused,
Yes.
doing the formula, you know, as is required in the assembly bill, it's 200 square feet per person. You know, 1,017 by 200, forgive me on rounding the numbers, but it's somewhere between 140, 150,000 square feet. No, I'm off on that number, sorry. I forget the exact square footage, but it comes down to 4.67 acres. So that would provide enough area for those 1,017 beds. What we've done, because we do want to account for the fact that not every parcel, you know, may end up turning into something or turning into a shelter. We wanted to pad that a little bit, so we used all the vacant, identifiable, you know, qualifiable property within the downtown. One other thing I would add, and I realize I omitted this in the original presentation, this is not authorizing, through the update to this section, this does not authorize the actual development of any shelter. Just as with the housing element, this is laying policy and laying the permission structure or the permitting structure so that should someone come in and propose to develop one, they would have the mechanism to do so in compliance with the law.
Any other comments?
I think my only comment is, and I don't know where this lands, but just in terms of distributional equity across the city, I am a bit concerned that only properties in the downtown neighborhood are getting this development code amendment, essentially protecting any other neighborhood from this process or this changed permitting process.
No, and thank you. That's an excellent comment. One other thing I would add to this. So, as I noted, we are under a very strict timeline on this. So as we started to get into it, we did initially look at, are there other areas that we may want to consider? You know, being that we have to provide the land in areas zoned for residential use, you know, you really are only limited to your residential zoning districts, either single or multifamily, and specific commercial districts. You know, there are other properties in the city that we may consider, just to be upfront about that, but that is a much larger discussion. And given the kind of the influx state we're in with finalizing our draft land use map, working on the overall general plan update, the comprehensive dev code update that we're doing, it's a much larger discussion that we wouldn't have had time for in order to stick to the schedule that we're on. When we get further into those projects, and as we start to formalize the policy within those, it's certainly something that we will look at, you know, as to whether we do want to provide more equitable distribution. That is what, if you look at the parcels that are in the overlay right now, that is something that they did. To be frank, it's a matter of timing right now. We just didn't have the ability to do that. And until we set the broad kind of land use plan for the city, anything we do could easily be rendered invalid should things change, you know, as we're proposing. So that's an item we would consider bringing back.
So clarification, we can revise it.
Yeah, just
In the
as
future.
part of any section of the development code, this could be revised. And just to add, you know, the numbers the area that we're providing right now is also prone to changing. You know, we're doing this based off of the specific unhoused population in our most recent count. There's a new count for 2024. My understanding is that the numbers on that are supposed to be coming out sometime, you know, by the end of April. That could change the number. It could go up, could go down. We also have a number of projects that we unfortunately could not consider in the calculations for this evening, but there's a number of projects that the city's working on, both on its own and with developing partners, to establish more shelter facilities in other locations in the city. That will then reduce our unhoused population, so that would change how much area we need. So there's a lot of moving parts that kind of, when they all come together, will likely require us to come back at some point and really reassess. Maybe we don't need to designate so much area, or maybe we want a different location. But for the purposes of this evening, and again, the timing that we're on, this is the path forward that we could propose that would disrupt or modify the least within the existing ordinance and bring us into compliance with state law. And that was really where we tried to land, so that we could make sure to address both.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and getting in compliance is good. But in considering this, was any consideration given to all the property or state property down around the Orange Show, or some of the large vacant parcels down there that are, I guess that's a state property and it can't be incorporated in this use? And I'm asking that because this is all around where all the new development is going to be going for the where we remove the mall.
Yeah, this is all just a little bit north of that, kind of between roughly like 6th and 8th Street,
north, yeah.
give or take. No, just to be very honest, no, we didn't look at other properties specifically because, and this is similar, if I can try to relate it to a different project, similar to the rezonings that we were doing for our regional housing needs with the housing element, to go in and add, especially in areas where this type of use has never been considered. When we go in and do that, there are additional impacts that we have to analyze. That's all done through the environmental analysis for the project. That is not something that we had time for through this process. So we did, again, going back to why we stuck with the CR2, is that zone has already had that analysis completed. And changing the permitting structure within that zone doesn't create or modify the potential impacts that we've considered. Should we want to go do that, and as I mentioned for Commissioner Flores, we can certainly do that with the broader update, but it would be something that would make it unfeasible for us to stay in compliance with the judgment. And should we not, then there are penalties, things that could come down that would be detrimental to the department. So this is a kind of an interim, if you will, way of addressing this matter.
What is the timeline?
We're required through the stipulated judgment to have this adopted by April 17th. The schedule that we're on right now, obviously we're here on March 12th with the Planning Commission. Should this item proceed through tonight, we are already have preliminarily scheduled, the item for an initial reading with the council at their meeting on April 3rd, and then the second reading that would formally adopt the item would be on the 17th. So it would get us right to that
When did we know about this?
This has come through the stipulated judgment, I believe, was as of August last year. That was when it was executed, July, August. I may be off on that. But to answer the question I think we're going to have, this was all tied into the adoption of the housing element, the update to the density bonus ordinance, and the update to this section. There were specific things. The other items, the density bonus was a simpler item, I'll be very frank, so that did proceed earlier. The housing element really was the dominant item through this whole process, and really took all of the time. So unfortunately, it did not leave us as much as we would have perhaps preferred.
And I understand that, and I also understand the shortage of staff. My concern is rushing through a project where we could zone other areas in the city instead of just concentrating in one area. And how you said, I understand you said that would take a longer time. How long would that take?
I can't put an exact fine point on that, just because any consideration of new zoning districts, new land uses would really get tied up into the overall project. As it is, the timeline we're on for completion of the general plan update, the development code, the downtown plan, and the associated smaller projects is roughly the end of this year, first quarter of next year. That would put us well past the judgment. The other thing that I do just want to clarify again, because I may have said this quickly, is as it is right now, this is not written in any way that would all of a sudden concentrate shelters within any specific area of the city. As it is right now, you can come in, you can develop one by right, just going through staff, through kind of a ministerial, process for our design review, and then through the appropriate building permits in all of the industrial and heavy commercial areas within the overlay as it is written today. Likewise, you could come in and propose to develop a shelter in all of the properties and additional properties in the CR2, those that we have now excluded because they've been developed with other uses. You can come in right now and submit an application to do that. It would be a conditional use permit application, so it would not be a guaranteed item. That would have to come through the body here. But it's already an area that identifies them and has considered the development of there. So what we're doing, again, is not saying we only want them here versus over here. It's we're sticking to the exact same properties that could be developed today, simply modifying the permitting structure for it.
So the other locations would not have a modified permitting structure?
The other locations that are in the shelter overlay already permit them by right. So there's no need to modify that. We would simply be making the permitting requirements in the downtown consistent with those elsewhere in the city.
Understood, thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
One more question, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Commissioner. Is there like a GIS map online that would show, well, you said it could be anywhere, right? Oh, within the industrial zones.
So on our interactive map, I know it's on our internal. I don't regularly use the public one, but it should be on there as well, and I could, we could confirm. There is an overlay layer that we can bring up that does identify them.
Okay.
The areas, as I recall, and I don't have the exhibit in front of us this evening, there's some areas over off of Baseline, kind of on the west end of town. There's some parcels identified actually in the broad area along Rialto off of Rancho, in the general neighborhood of the previous project. There are properties down, I believe it's Gardena, just off of east of Waterman, south of Redlands Boulevard, kind of in backed up in there. There's some property along South Waterman, kind of a little bit above Central. And then, forgive me, there's one other area, and I think it's escaping me. But they're broken out, again, primarily in the industrial blocks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of questions. First one was, so on this overlay map that we have emergency shelters, we identified roughly 15 parcels. For these parcels, are they existing structures or vacant properties, or what, the majority of these, what's the condition?
So I do want to clarify, it's roughly 15 sites. Many of those are comprised of multiple parcels, and that's kind of how they're grouped, roughly on the first page of that supplemental exhibit. All of the properties right now on that list are vacant properties. We did go through and confirm that, and that is something that had to be considered, again, as part of the requirements for compliance with the legislation. If they were developed properties, there had to be additional analysis done as to how they would potentially be converted. So it was the simpler path to stick to just vacant properties that wouldn't have any, kind of any hindrance in development. And fortunately, because we were able to identify more than enough vacant land, we didn't have to include anything with the structure.
Okay, and then the next question is, how does this overlay, these emergency shelter overlay parcels relate to the homeless shelter grant funding that we just received for the city? Is it related to this emergency shelter as well, or is it separate?
So none of the properties, I know we have the Lutheran Social Service site that was just recently approved. I believe that was just at our last DERC meeting. That property is a separate matter that is not within any of the parcels identified here. And likewise, the city is working on its navigation center, which would provide a significant number of beds for the unhoused. That's over off of 6th Street, east of Waterman. Forgive me, I don't have the exact address this evening. It's over at the old School of Hope property. That property is also not included in this overlay, but as I was mentioning earlier, when those do come online, I believe that's, kind of the next, I believe the Lutheran site is roughly about a year out, and then the navigation center will be a little longer than that. When those come online, those would provide additional beds that would allow us to reduce, immediately reduce that unhoused population, which would in turn reduce the amount of property that we have to designate within our overlay. So that would go to what I had mentioned for Commissioner Flores about potentially coming back and, reassessing where some of these properties may be or how much we would need to consider.
Okay, and then the next question I had is, I know we received a letter for item number 6. I just wanted to know if staff considered that or had any concerns with the letter.
Yes, no, thank you. I would like to respond to that. We did receive this yesterday. This party, just for clarity, is one of the parties that we have been working with through the Housing Element Project, the Density Bonus Update, and they are a party to the stipulated judgment. So we've continued coordination with them through these kind of remainder items. The concerns that are in there, they break it down into 2 parts. It's, I believe, the second paragraph of the letter. They reference 3 government code sections. Those sections are, I won't get into the specific wording on them, but those are the sections that identify the requirement for properties that allow for residential use, which we have identified, because the CR2 does allow multifamily and mixed use with residential. Those are the ones that establish the requirement of the minimum area of 200 square feet per unhoused person. And the last one is that they have to be those vacant sites. All of that has been considered. It was all included in the staff report. It's on page 3, I believe, of the staff report in the analysis. At the time that we provided, we did provide some of the materials for this item to this group before this meeting. At the time we did, they had just been given the exhibits. The staff report was still being prepared, so the specific outline wasn't clear. That has since been provided to them earlier today, so we believe that addresses their concerns. The second issue regarding the standard for the maximum number of beds, yes, the way that we have crafted it is that the maximum number of beds, or the maximum occupancy, if you will, of any facility would be determined by the building and fire codes. There was a question in there about putting a specific number. And the explanation that we did provide, and would like to clarify for the body this evening, is that these are all different size properties. They would potentially have different types of structures, different size structures on them. Without knowing how big a facility would be, we wouldn't be able to immediately dictate the number. If we did, it would just be an arbitrary number that we decided we like this many people, at a given property. What we've elected to do instead, to make it simpler and to make it less of frankly, a discretionary consideration, is just to adhere to the building and fire code. So depending on what type of facility they propose, as long as they meet those objective code requirements, that's how many people they would be able to house there. There would be no additional consideration coming specifically from staff. And as far as referencing the specific section, that was a deliberate choice because, as we've seen in other items and other places where we do reference the building code within the development code itself, we typically don't call out a specific subsection of a separate code. We generally also try to avoid that, as we can with the government code, or putting, specific language out of another document in there, because anytime that changes, and we know the building and fire codes, change on a regular cycle, if for some reason something changes, then that immediately makes that section in our development code incompatible. It can render that, invalid. So we try to keep it a little as simple as possible, and then the standard, whether we put it in the development code or not, the standard exists, in a very clear way within those other documents.
And then just my final question. So this emergency shelter overlay is I'm going to call it a preliminary plan, proposed overlay, if you will. And then we said it's going to get finalized at a later date. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, what we have proposed, and should it proceed through the commission and then through those 2 council meetings I mentioned, that would be a formal overlay. It would be adopted, it would be part of our code, 30 days after that formal adoption by the council. What I would look at this, and I think the way I was trying to describe it earlier, is this is a little bit more of an interim solution. So it would still be official, enforceable. Should this be adopted in this way, if somebody came in on an appropriate property, they would be permitted following the specific development standards and the specific permitting structure to develop a facility. But it is a little bit of an interim solution because there are so many other things in flux with the larger updates that we're doing that we will need to come back and do some additional consideration, possibly update it in different ways, maybe identify different properties. The permitting requirement, just to be clear, the by right allowance and the development standards, those are out of state law. So wherever we identify them, they will still have to follow that exactly as it's written. There won't be the ability to come in and put additional standards on it or say, no, we want to require this permit. If we wanted to require it in a more intense permit, the proper conditional use permit, if you will, that would have to be on property that exceeds the minimum that we have to identify. But as I said, when we do go through and do that, because all of our zoning districts are going to change quite, it's anticipated they change quite significantly, especially in the downtown area with the specific plan coming, that we will have to come back through that larger update. So it'll be incorporated in that, and we'll provide additional.
Thank you for that. And then just the last question. So are developers, builders coming in and into different cities, or can you provide an example from another city what they're doing? Are they coming in and saying, hey, we want to build an emergency shelter or homeless shelter within your city, or how are these projects funded, or
I can
how are
tell
they
you,
considered?
to be honest, I don't have an answer for you other than those 2 projects I mentioned. In my time with the city, which is just over 10 years now, on any of these shelter overlay properties within the downtown area, anything like that, we haven't had any private parties come in to develop one. The ones that have come in and have only really started to ramp up here in the last couple years have been those that are partnering with the housing department or the housing division of our department. And typically, the funding on those, a lot of it for this type of thing, a lot of it does come kind of through state funding or different grants. But I wouldn't be able to speak too specifically about that. That would be something I would have to confirm with housing.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
One more question. Earlier, we had talked about these properties, and you said some are city-owned and some are privately owned
That's correct.
properties. Should have those property owners or the surrounding property owners been notified that this process is going forward and have an opportunity to talk to the Planning Commission if we're making a decision on these properties and zone changes?
So again, with the way, because this is a legislative item that does affect, a significant portion of the city and affects the code, which then affects the city at large, this is done just as a standard through a display advertisement in the newspaper. It's a little bit more of an enhanced process from the normal ad we do. And in these situations, because there are so many properties involved, we don't send out specific mailers. That being said, what I would want to just emphasize one more time is we're not changing, there is no zone change to the property, to any of these properties. They are CR2 yesterday, they will be CR2 tomorrow, whether or not this happens. And the shelters are already permitted there. If we go to our development code right now, you look, commercial table, emergency shelters, CR2 zone, they're permitted. The only thing that we are changing for today aside from, some of the specific development standards, is that they would now no longer require the conditional use permit. They would just require the ministerial approval through the department. They would, for these specific properties, they would no longer come through the commission. But there is no, similar to the way we did it with the, well, I'll compare again to the zone changes or the zoning updates we did for our arena. None of those properties, well, some of them did change a little bit, but it was simply to enhance what was already allowed there. You could already build multifamily. We did those changes to allow for more units of multifamily. So there wasn't any specific land use change. There wasn't any, anything being taken away from any property owner's rights. They were maintained effectively the same. That's the intent through this. So the uses, again, they exist on the table. They will exist where they have. It's simply when somebody comes to the counter and they say, what type of application do I need? We now provide them an administrative process versus the conditional use process.
For clarification, we're approving these broadly, generically as shelters. They would not come back to this body for approval as a shelter where they would have had to come back to this body before. Like, if this item is approved,
Yes.
we won't approve them as shelters
For these specific
for these
parcels,
properties, right?
yes, because state law does now require that they are a by right approval.
Got it.
We would be prohibited from requiring a conditional use permit. But just to clarify the other part of your question, all we're doing this evening is approving or recommending approval of the mechanism with which we could allow them. It's not approving anyone other uses that are permitted on any of these properties. Somebody could come in, as we had tonight, we had discussion about several new developments, one of which was in the downtown. Something like that could still come in on one of the properties, or something could be vacant, or, they could do a number of other things. It's not approving the specific development this evening.
I have a comment. This is the third or fourth item that has a tight timeline and didn't have time to come back and forth. We need to have it done now or we're going to be out of compliance with the state. Do we have other projects that we're expecting this tight timeline and we don't have time to really consider anything?
This, I can say this is our final item for, our final immediate item for compliance with that stipulated judgment. And that's really been the only thing that's been driving the timelines on all of these projects. There are other items within it, but they're more, consistency with kind of annual reporting and other things that we do, which are more staff level items. As far as amendments to the code or any other, code or general plan, anything like that, this would be the final one.
And the main reason that we fell behind was because, we've had time to do it and we couldn't, staffing shortages is part of it.
I wouldn't say we fell behind on anything, but certainly, without kind of beating the same drum over and over, staffing did contribute to this. Through this process, I can tell you with the housing element and with, these associated projects, there has been myself and our director, who is no longer with us. And the pressing, all of these items being urgent, but the fact that we were already at, I think by the time we adopted the housing element, we were just about 2.5 years late. That was a much more pressing matter, and the way that the judgment was put together had, here's a first deadline, for this item, and then there are other items by these dates, so we did have to work sequentially. And given the fact that we did have limited resources, we could not work on all items at the same time.
All right, just want clarification for
Yeah.
the public too. All right. Do we have any other public comments on this item? No.
I got something real quick. I've been wrapping my head around all this information and also multitasking by reading the Assembly Bill 2339. From what I'm gathering, it's basically identifying the emergency shelters as a permitted use rather than a conditional use. And then the other thing that's a bullet point on the actual Assembly Bill that was given to, that was sent by the state to the planning directors, is that the local government, which would be here staff, to demonstrate the adequacy of sites identified to accommodate emergency shelters. And in a statement you mentioned, some of the sites were reviewed.
Well, we looked at every one of the parcels that are included. I can say I did personally. And the adequacy of them, I think the section you're specifically referring to, unless I'm mistaken, is, referring to the total area that we need to be able to provide to account for that unhoused population. And that's what was done with that 1,017 unsheltered, the 200 square foot, identifying the 4.67 acres, and then finding that we had 8.9 that we could dedicate for this purpose.
Yeah, I think what I'm also reading is zone for if there's a vacant site zone for non-residential, but also allows residential development, there's amenities near it.
Correct. Yeah, you're referring to subsection H, I believe it is.
Subdivision A for
I believe
government code.
we're in. I believe we're in 4A or 4H, or little a 4 and then a big H. That identifies that we did have, as you mentioned, there are 3 options for how we could identify properties. One was vacant sites zoned for residential use. That would be exclusively residential properties. And given the concerns that have been addressed and staff's concerns, we didn't want to move too quickly without proper consideration into our existing residential neighborhoods or existing residentially zoned neighborhoods. The second one, which is what we did look at, was the vacant sites zoned for non-residential use, which would be our CR2 zone that allow residential development. And what we looked at as far as the number of services, being that they're within the downtown, there are already, the typical resources that you would look for. We do have the transit access. We have, the other agencies that would generally service the unhoused population. So we believed that those properties met that threshold as far as, availability and access to those needs.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any more public comments? If not, we will now close the public hearing. And I need a motion.
I move to approve Development Code Amendment 24-02.
Second.
Chair Armstead? Vice Chair Creel? Commissioner Ivan Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Flores?
Yes.
Commissioner Sherrick?
Yes.
And Commissioner Orlando Garcia?
Yes.
The vote is unanimous.
All right, thank you, everyone. We are now, are there any non-public hearing items? I guess, yeah. Any commissioner reports or announcements?
I just want to confirm the tour or the museum tour is still Thursday? 10 a.m.? Thank you.
Okay, and now we're adjourned. The next regular meeting of the Planning Commission will be Tuesday, April 9th at 6 o'clock.
I would like to make a comment before we
Okay.
adjourn, or a question. Is there any update on the property that's been demolished over here at the Carousel Mall?
So at this time, I don't have any update available for that. I know that is working through the process, but I say humbly, at levels above my grade. So when we do have that, and certainly when we do bring on our more management staff, we can work to provide that. No, excuse me. I do just want to make a couple quick just announcements on our end. As it is right now, we do know Mary Lanier, our interim director for the last 8-9 months, did leave us as of the February 21st meeting. That was the meeting when we were able to take our density bonus and housing element through. We do have a new director that's coming on. I do not have a name to say publicly just yet, but it has been basically relayed to us that they will be starting next week. So we're excited about that. Hopefully that will help. And then similarly, we do have 2 new planners that we've brought on since the last meeting. They have taken time out of their day to sit through the meeting here with us. I just kind of want to introduce them. We have George Velarde. He was brought in as an associate planner. And then we do have Christian Callison. He was brought in as an assistant planner. They've been a great addition to the team so far. We've I don't know how many projects we've put on their desk, but they haven't shied away from it, which has been great. And with the discussion as we had earlier, given staffing and certain items, it's a big boon for the department, and hopefully will allow us to start bringing more projects through the commission and our other meetings, and getting some development moving again. So we're very happy about that.
Okay, as your director's report, maybe that was it.
That's really it. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess we're officially adjourned.